Hey there, welcome to the Focus Podcast with Taralee. This is the place where we talk about real life, real relationships, and how to grow through it all. If you're looking for simple mindset shifts, better communication, and deeper connections, you're in the right spot. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Focus Podcast. I'm Taralee Eddington, and I help individuals and couples in marriage crisis rebuild emotional safety, trust, communication, and connection when the relationship feels fragile, distant, or on the brink. And today, I want to talk about something that I see all the time. When your marriage is in crisis, you're probably doing a lot. You may be thinking constantly. You may be replaying conversations. You may be trying to say the right thing. You may be reading books, listening to podcasts, watching videos, asking friends, praying, journaling, apologizing, texting, trying to give space, trying to reconnect, trying to stay calm, trying not to mess this up. And yet somehow, even with all of that effort, it still may feel like things are getting worse. Your spouse is still guarded. The conversations still go sideways. The distance still feels terrifying. You still don't know what to do when they're cold, quiet, angry, withdrawn, or uncertain. And that is what I want to speak to today. Because I don't think most people are failing in their marriage crisis because they don't care. A lot of the people I work with care very deeply. They're desperate for the marriage to heal. They're willing to do the work. They're willing to look at themselves. They're willing to change, but they're trying to navigate a marriage crisis without a clear plan. And without a plan, panic usually takes over. So today's episode is called Stop Guessing Why Your Marriage Crisis Needs a Plan, Not More Panic. Because if you are in that place where your spouse says that they're done, or that they need space, or that they're not sure that they love you anymore, or that they want separation, or they don't know if they want to keep trying, your next move matters. Not because one perfect move saves everything, but because repeated reactive moves can keep feeding that very cycle that you are trying to change. And I want to help you see that more clearly today. But before we get into it, I want to say this. If your marriage feels fragile right now and you know you need help knowing what to do next, I'm still offering consultation calls right now. You can go to TaraleeEddington.com and book a consultation call with me. We'll walk through what's happening, what stage your marriage crisis seems to be in, and what pattern is keeping you stuck, and what kind of support would help you move forward. So, okay, let's get into today's episode. When your spouse starts pulling away, panic makes a lot of sense. I want to normalize that first and foremost, because if someone you love starts to emotionally detach, if they say that they're done, if they stop reaching for you, if they become cold or distant, if they mention separation or divorce, your body does not experience that as neutral information. Your body experiences it as danger. And when your nervous system senses danger, it wants relief. It wants certainty. It wants safety. It wants to know, are we okay? Are you leaving? Do you still love me? Is there still a chance? What does this mean? What do I do? So of course you want to fix it quickly. Of course you want the conversation now. Of course you want reassurance now. And of course you want to explain your heart. Of course you want them to understand that you do care, that you are trying, that you see things differently now. That reaction is human. But here is where it gets tricky. Panic will usually tell you to do more, to say more, to text more, to ask more, to explain more, to apologize more, to check more, to push more, to research more, monitor more. And sometimes the thing panic tells you to do is very loving. It feels like I'm fighting for my marriage. But to your spouse, it may not feel like love. It may feel like pressure. It may feel like emotional demand. It may feel like you are trying to manage their response so that you can feel better. And this is where people get so discouraged because they think, but I'm trying so hard. Why are they getting more distant? Sometimes it's because the strategy you are using is accidentally creating the opposite of what you want. You want more closeness, but the way you are reaching for closeness may be creating more pressure. You want reassurance, but the way that you are asking for reassurance may be creating exhaustion. You want to show them that you care, but the way you're trying to show it may be centered around your fear instead of their safety. And that is why more effort is not always the answer. The right effort in the right order is what matters. Your marriage crisis has a pattern, and I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it because it matters. Most marriage crises do not start with one big fight. They don't start with the divorce conversation, and they don't start with the separation. Those things are usually symptoms of what has been building underneath for a long time. There is almost always a pattern. One person pursues and the other withdraws. One person criticizes and the other defends. One person gets anxious and wants to talk. The other gets overwhelmed and shuts down. One person feels abandoned, the other feels controlled. One person says, "You never hear me," and the other person says, "Nothing I do is ever enough." One person keeps trying to get connection, the other keeps trying to get space. And over time, both start protecting themselves. That is what makes a marriage crisis so painful. You're not just dealing with one conversation, you're dealing with a pattern that has trained both of your nervous systems what to expect from each other. So your spouse may not just be responding to what you said today, they may be responding to what they have come to expect from the pattern. They may expect you to get defensive. They may expect you to make it about yourself. They may expect you to push. They may expect you to shut down. They may expect you to apologize and then go back to the same behavior. They may expect that if they're honest, it will turn into a fight. And you may have expectations too. You may expect rejection, criticism. You may expect silence. You may expect that no matter what you do, it won't be enough. So now you are not just two people having a conversation. You are two nervous systems reacting to a history. This is why just communicate is not enough. Communication does matter, but communication without safety often becomes another place where the old pattern plays out. You may think we need to talk, but your spouse may think, here we go again. You may think I'm trying to repair, but your spouse may think this is going to become another emotional conversation where I have to take care of your fear. You may think I'm taking responsibility, but your spouse may think, are they really changing, or are they just saying this because they don't want me to leave? That does not mean there is no hope. It means you need a different approach. You need to stop trying to win the conversation and start interrupting the pattern. The wrong strategy can make things worse, and this is one of the hardest parts of marriage crisis coaching. A lot of people are doing things that sound right on the surface. They're apologizing, they're asking to talk, they're trying to reconnect, they're trying to show affection, they're trying to be helpful, they're trying to explain what they mean, they're trying to prove that they care. And those things are not automatically wrong, but in a fragile marriage, timing matters, emotional safety matters, capacity matters, the stage of the crisis matters. If your spouse is shut down, a deep emotional processing conversation may not create connection. It may create more withdrawal. If your spouse is guarded, a big vulnerable confession may not create closeness. It may feel like pressure to reassure you. If your spouse has lost trust, another promise may not create trust. It may just sound like more words. If your spouse has asked for space, repeated attempts to clarify their relationship may feel like you are not respecting what they asked for. Again, I'm not saying you should disappear or become cold or punish them with silence or pretend that you don't care. That is not what I teach. What I am saying is that a marriage crisis needs wisdom. It needs structure. It needs a plan. Because when you don't have a plan, you'll often let the emotional temperature of the day decide your next move. If they're warm, you get hopeful and maybe overdo it. If they're cold, you spiral and maybe pursue. If they're angry, you defend. If they're quiet, you panic. If they're kind, you want to ask, does this mean we're okay? So your spouse's mood becomes your strategy, and that is exhausting for both of you. A plan helps you stop doing that. A plan helps you know what you are practicing regardless of whether today feels hopeful or terrifying. It helps you stop treating every moment like a verdict. And that steadiness is a huge part of rebuilding safety. So what does a plan actually do? A plan does not control your spouse. And that is a very important point. A plan does not make your spouse forgive you faster. It does not make them want closeness on your timeline. It doesn't erase years of pain, and it doesn't guarantee the exact outcome you want. But a plan does give you something incredibly valuable. It gives you a way to lead yourself. In a marriage crisis, that really matters, because when you can lead yourself, you stop making your spouse responsible for regulating your fear. You stop turning every conversation into a search for reassurance. You stop throwing random strategies at the marriage and hoping something sticks. You stop trying to solve the whole future of the relationship every time there's a hard moment. A plan helps you slow down. It helps you ask better questions. Not how do I get them back today, but what would create safety in this next interaction? Not how do I prove I've changed, but what kind of person am I becoming even if they're not ready to trust it yet? Not how do I get them to reassure me, but how do I stay grounded enough to respond instead of react? Not how do I make this pain go away, but what is the next right step that does not feed the old cycle? That is a very different way to show up, and it's much more powerful than panic. Okay, so stop asking, how do I get them back? And I really want to pause on this because this is a question people often bring into a consult call. They may not say it exactly this way, but underneath the pain is often, how do I get them back? How do I get them to see that I've changed? How do I get them to want me again? How do I get them to stop being so guarded? How do I get them to try? And I understand all of these questions. When you love someone and you feel like you're losing them, of course you want to know how to get them back. But that question can become dangerous if it puts you in a position where everything you do is about managing your spouse's response, because then even your growth becomes a strategy to control the outcome. And most people can feel that. Your spouse may not be able to name it, but they can often feel the difference between I am becoming safer because this is who I want to be, and I am becoming safer so you will come back and make me feel okay. Those are two very different things. One creates more safety, the other can create more pressure. So I want you to start asking a better question. What would it look like to become a safer, steadier, more honest version of myself in this stage of the crisis? That doesn't mean that you're the only problem, and that doesn't mean that your spouse has no work to do. That does not mean everything is your fault. It means you're taking responsibility for the part that you can actually lead, which is your tone, your timing, your emotional regulation, your ownership, your consistency, your repair, your boundaries, your ability to stop participating in the same pattern. That's where your power is. Not control, but power. And there's a big difference. Control says, how do I make them change? Power says, how do I lead myself well enough to create the best conditions for healing? Okay, stop trying to prove and start becoming. And this is another place where people get stuck. They want their spouse to believe that they're changing. And again, I understand that. It is painful to do real work and feel like your spouse doesn't see it. It's painful to apologize and still be met with skepticism. It's painful to stay calm and not get credit. It's painful to give space and still feel like they're distant. It's painful to try to own your part and still hear, I don't know if I believe you. But trust does not usually come back because you gave one good apology. Trust comes back through consistent data over time. Your spouse may need to see who you are when they are not warm, who you are when they're still guarded, who you are when they do not reassure you. They need to see who you are when they bring up pain, who you are when they're not ready to move forward, who you are when you do not get immediate credit for your effort. This is where the work gets real, because a lot of people can change for a few days when they think it will get them relief. But deeper change is different. Deeper change says, I'm not doing this only to get a response from you. I'm doing this because I can see that the old version of me contributed to the pain, and I don't want to keep living from that pattern. That kind of change feels different. It's steadier, it's less frantic, it's less demanding, and over time it can create more safety. Again, not because it guarantees an outcome, but because safety grows in the presence of consistency. One of the reasons marriage crisis is so exhausting is that your hope can rise and fall 20 times a day. They text you back warmly and you think, okay, maybe we're okay. Then they're quiet at dinner and you think, that's it, it's over. They mention something about the future and you feel hope. They sleep turned away from you and you spiral. They laugh at something you say and you feel close. They say they still need space and you crash. That kind of hope is not really hope. It's emotional tracking. It's your nervous system trying to predict the future based on tiny pieces of data. And I understand why you do it, but it is going to wear you out. And when you're worn out, you are more likely to react in ways that feed the cycle. Real hope is different. Hope is not pretending the marriage is fine. Hope is not ignoring the seriousness of the crisis. Hope is not saying everything will work out exactly the way I want. Hope is the belief that the next right step still matters, even when the outcome is not guaranteed, even when your spouse is unsure, even when the timeline is unclear, even when the marriage feels fragile. Hope is what allows you to act with wisdom instead of panic. And sometimes hope looks very quiet. It looks like pausing before you send the text. It looks like owning one specific thing without defending. It looks like saying, I can see why that hurt you, and not immediately adding your explanation. It looks like giving space without becoming cold or punishing. It looks like telling the truth without blame. It looks like getting support because you are tired of repeating the same cycle. That is hope. That's not hype. It's not forced positivity. It's grounded hope. You may be too close to the crisis to lead it alone. And I want to say this gently but clearly. You may be too close to this crisis to see the pattern clearly. And that doesn't mean that you're incapable. It doesn't mean that you're not smart, and it doesn't mean that you're not spiritually grounded or emotionally aware or even committed. It means that you are in the middle of the pain. And when you are inside your own marriage crisis, everything feels loaded. A text is not just a text. A sigh is not just a sigh. A quiet night is not just a quiet night. A hard conversation is not just a hard conversation. Everything can feel like evidence. Evidence that there's hope. Evidence that it's over. Evidence that you're failing. Evidence that they don't care. Evidence that you should try harder. Evidence that you should give up. And that is an exhausting way to live. And it's very hard to make wise decisions from that place. This is why I believe so strongly in having a plan and having support. Not because someone else can promise you that your marriage will heal, because I would never promise that, but because your spouse still has agency. You still have agency. There are real choices involved, but support can help you stop spinning. It can help you see what is actually happening. It can help you stop using the wrong strategy for the stage that you're in. It can help you create emotional safety instead of pressure. It can help you take ownership without drowning in shame. Support can help you communicate in a way that does not keep reactivating the old cycle. It can help you know what to do next. And when your marriage is in crisis, knowing the right next step matters. So let's make this practical. If you are in a marriage crisis, I want you to stop and ask yourself, am I acting from panic or from a plan? You will know if it's panic if you're trying to get immediate certainty. You'll know that it's panic if you keep needing your spouse to reassure you before you can stay steady. And you'll know it's panic if you're sending the long text because you can't tolerate the silence. You'll know that it's panic if you're asking for another conversation, even though the last 5 conversations ended the exact same way. You'll know that it's panic if your main goal is to get them to stop feeling what they feel. A plan feels different. A plan says, I can slow down. A plan says, I can choose one grounded next step. I can stop feeding the old pattern. A plan says, I can create safety before I ask for vulnerability. I can own my part without defending. I can give space without disappearing. A plan says, I can tell the truth without attacking. I can become more consistent even before they trust it. I can get help instead of trying to figure this out alone. That is the shift. And for some of you, that shift may be the beginning of a very different season in your marriage. Not because everything changes overnight, but because you stop making things worse with panic and you start becoming someone safer, someone steadier, someone clearer. You start becoming more emotionally mature, more grounded, and that changes the environment around you. So here's what I want you to hear as we wrap this up today. Your marriage does not need more guessing. It doesn't need another desperate conversation that leaves both of you more discouraged. It doesn't need you to keep trying a new strategy every time your spouse's mood changes. It doesn't need more panic dressed up as effort. Your marriage needs safety. It needs clarity. It needs emotional steadiness. It needs ownership. Your marriage needs a plan. And if you're listening to this thinking, this is exactly where we are, I don't know what to do next. I don't know whether to move closer or to give space. I don't know how to stop the cycle. I don't know how to rebuild safety when my spouse is guarded or unsure. Then I want to invite you to book a consultation call with me. I'm still offering consultation calls right now, and this is the best next step if your marriage is in crisis and you want help seeing what is actually happening and what kind of support would help you move forward. So go to TaraleeEddington.com and book a consultation call right now. We'll look at what stage your marriage crisis is in and what pattern is keeping you stuck and what next steps make sense for you. You don't have to figure this out alone, and you don't have to keep reacting from fear. There is a steadier way to move through this, and I would love to help support you in that. So thank you for being here with me today on the Focus Podcast. If this episode helped you, please share it with someone who feels like they're spinning in their marriage and doesn't know what to do next. And if that person is you, go book the consultation call while I'm still offering them. Remember, what you focus on expands, and I will see you next week. Thanks for hanging out with me today on the Focus Podcast. If something stood out or helped you in some way, feel free to share it or leave a quick review. It means a lot. Keep showing up, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next episode.